Jennifer, if you have the capability of speaking, I see a microphone there. What would you like to get out of this presentation?
There's a lot to accessibility. It's just trying to help me to get a better gauge, to get some better guidelines and ideas on how to improve our own gateway.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, I tell you what, I've got some slides, and I, it's almost like you have to eat your vegetables first, and then we'll give you dessert. Let me run you through some vegetable slides, just so we're kind of all on the same playing field, and then we'll get into that. Does that sound like a good idea? Joseph, like, no, just get my SVG fixed. So, okay, well, good. We answered that one. So what would you like me to cover? So I have given you a whole host of assets that we may or may not use today. But I'm going to put these in the chat window. And if you'll open up that document, that page, you should get something like that. And so I've given you some assets in here. One of them is a tools worksheet that has all the accessibility testing tools that I kind of like. There's a million of them out there. But what I've done is I will demonstrate these if y'all were interested in seeing them. But it gives you the name and who they are. But not all tools are good for evaluating all kinds of disabilities. So I've gone in and I've kind of told you which ones are good for which one. And then we'll talk a little bit about what's manual and automated. It's really easy. An automated tool is you push a button, it tries to give you an answer. Is it accessible, yes or no? Manual tools, you push a button and it says, here are some results, and then it's kind of up to you to interpret them. So I'll be showing some of those. There's a gateway checklist. This is from the plenarium, and it has a subset of things in here.
And I'll point out that they're also, sure, these things are all linked also in the Google Doc that's in this shared thing. And there's also some tabs up at the top of the above the Google Doc that have the checklist and
great. So these are actually in
slides.
the
his slides too.
plenarium.
Well, no, if you go to if you're in the learning lab area, there's the Google Doc, and it's all the notes and resources. There's the accessibility checklist, which is also above, but then the presentation assets page.
Oh, right here.
You have a link in it. And actually, perfect, that's right. I had meant to embed that. I forgot, but anyway.
That's good.
Yeah.
I found it. Yeah. So the checklist, if you want to get this far, because really with the two people, we do what you want to do. There are checks that a content editor would do. So the people that are using your gateway and are filling it out, these are things that would help them. But then there's the one that are for the developers. And this is a very small subset of the WCAG. But it's ones that I wanted to kind of call out because this dovetailed in with a usability presentation that we just got through doing with Paul. And then there's some other things in here that we'll go through. So first of all, there are really, people say there are 4 divisions of accessibility, vision, mobility, hearing, cognitive, and really there are 5. Vocalization has come on in recent years. So vision actually breaks down into 4 different categories. Now, blind, low vision, colorblind. And the reason we do that is we actually test those all individually. The way I would test for low vision or colorblind would be completely different than the way I test for somebody's blind. Deaf, does anybody know why this is written deaf with a capital D and a small d, a slash with a small d?
No.
Okay. People who are deaf and use sign language as their primary language consider themselves to be a different linguistic group. So deaf is a culture. So just like English would have a capital E or Spanish would have a capital E, people that are part of the deaf community would capitalize D and deaf because they're a different culture. But people that are hard of hearing, it's a little different. So you would have D with you'd have a small d for deaf. A little fun. And vocalization is something's come on recently with the Amazon Echo and all these other things. There's no other interface except for voice. So, you know, now we're starting to think through, oh, okay, how does somebody who can't speak or is not going to be able to interact with it, how are we going to handle that? So those are the I consider to be the domains of accessibility. And so here we get to the vegetable part. And Jennifer, this one is the reason I'm doing this. This one is for you. You know, so we need to know, we need a yardstick to know if we're getting accessibility right, and that would be the web content accessibility guidelines. And have you all heard of the web content accessibility guidelines? Yeah. Okay, so everybody's heard them, right? They're a principle-based guideline that describes what an accessible experience should be, not necessarily the technology behind it. So the technical standards would be like HTML5 and WAY ARIA. So Joseph, WAY ARIA, this conversation is for you. So you have the guidelines, and underneath it you have something like HTML5. HTML5 has gaps. So when you said I have a graph, immediately I'm like, HTML5 is not going to solve your problems. So I have these accessibility gaps in the standard. That is where things come into play. And I'll give you an example. So let's say you have a button on a screen and you push the button and it toggles down, and you push and it toggles up, right? HTML5 has no way to say this button is toggled on and this button is toggled off. ARIA comes in, and you would extend the HTML5 button by having an ARIA pressed or something like that. And ARIA pressed would say when you click it, it would say I'm on, it would say I'm off. So ARIA works with HTML5, and that is kind of the language of the internet right now. But we said that the WCAG principles aren't just for web, right? So they're also used for documents. So if you put when I put my PDF out to Catherine, I'm like, I need to make it accessible first, right? So literally, I apply the WCAG guidelines to those Word documents and the PDFs coming out, because I want them to be accessible, and the WCAG is that guidance. So just one step deeper, and I promise you, we're almost through with the vegetable part. Y'all are doing wonderful. Just a little bit more about the web content accessibility guidelines, just so everybody is kind of up to speed. And I think I have these linked actually in the course, in the document. So there's two standards. There's 2.0 and 2.1. 2.0 came out in 2008. 2.1 was updated in 2018. So we only get one every 10 years. The difference primarily between 2.0 and 2.1 is 2.1 has a lot more about mobile in it. So it says, if you have a mobile app, can I put it in landscape and will it transform down? So it's got, and it has other things in there that are really good. But 2.0 and 2.1 are the two that are currently out there. So the content accessibility guidelines are broken up into 4 categories: perceivable, operable, understandable, robust. Let's just forget that. That's great for creating a standard. It makes it very hard for us to understand the guidelines. What we're looking for is so we're coming down to here what they call the success criteria. So the success criteria describe, much like stereo instructions describe installing a stereo, what is successful. So success criteria 1.1.1 non-text content. All non-text content that is represented to the user has a text alternative that serves the equivalent process except for the situations listed below. Good grief, what is that thing saying? What it's saying is, if you have a graphic on a page, you need to put alternative text on it. So a person that's using assistive technology, when they run into an image, it will be able to tell you what it is. So why didn't they just say, hey, put text on graphics? Well, because they're making it a principle, and that way it, as other things come along besides graphics, this standard will be able to address it. And I'll be honest with you, it's held up pretty well. I mean, the version 1 was in, a long time ago in 1990s, but version 2 came out in 2018, and it actually has held up fairly well. Just the only other things you need to know about it, it's broken up into levels A, AA, and AAA, AA and AAA. For your school, I promise you are doing level AA. Everybody has, so level A in 2000, in 2008, 2009, we were just trying to figure out what accessibility was. And so we said, if you do A, that's a reasonable degree of accessibility. Well, since then things have progressed, and so now we have AA, and so now AA is the standard. So AAA is aspirational. So, for example, sign language for pre-recorded, rather than having closed captions on a video, have somebody actually signing it on a video. Somebody who's deaf, that is appropriate because that is actually the language that they speak. So, but we don't know how to do that. It's terribly difficult. It'd be terribly expensive. I've only seen a handful of systems that even do it. Driver's license are one of the few pieces of technology that some states have done that actually have this feature. So we have level AAA on that. So the guidelines are principle based. They're not supposed to be prescriptive. They're not supposed to be, tell you how to do it. They're telling you what the end result should be. So as for which version of the guideline you should use, well, if you're in the federal government, you're doing WCAG 2.0 level AA. It's written into Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act. It's just the way it is. It's referenced it's in law by reference. Universities, however, your students are all mobile. All right. So the technology that you're bringing in, you're very concerned about the mobile experience. So I have seen a tremendous number of universities that are moving to WCAG 2.1 level AA. I have seen some litigation come down that is also referencing WCAG 2.1 level AA. So I would encourage you, because of who you are and your audience, that you consider using WCAG 2.1 level AA as your standard. Okay, so how are we doing? It's feedback so far. I know I'm just boring the heck out of you, aren't I? You're like, come on, man. You got to start showing us something cool, or we're leaving. If one of us leaves, you lose 50% of your audience. So let's talk about the testing tools, right? Okay, so we're starting to warm up now. I'm going to show you some automated testing tools. Automated testing tools can only catch between 30 and 40% of accessibility errors. And that's just the way it is. Because automated testing tools, they take the code and they can find things that are not coded correctly. You have a label, you have a form field. There's a way your label is supposed to be associated to your form field. So when you land on first name, the first name field to fill it out, it'll say, this is your first name. If they're not associated, then when you land on a text field that's not associated, it goes, I'm a text field, I don't know, enter what you want. I have no idea what it is. So that can be caught because it's just this coding thing, right? But the majority of stuff can't. And I've been working on this, taking the WCAG, and I was going through and I was trying to count how many of the principles can actually be tested automatically. And I'm not ready to put this out because I'm still working on it. But out of 50 principles that I have on the screen, only 9 can really be tested in using automated tools. And I know you can't see it. I'm sorry. It's so it's only like 18%. So that means, so now doing something weird, that means 30 to 40% of the errors are happening, that an automated tool can catch are actually happening in those nine principles. And as soon as I get this finished, I'll send it out. It just wasn't quite finished here, but I was, I'm always questioning everything, right? And because this is just something the industry says over and over again. And eventually you got to go, well, is the industry right? Errors caught tend to be semantic code problems. All right. These are ones I really, so Catherine, if you would do me a favor, these are great ones to go in the notes that you put in the Quico chat.
Oh, yeah.
Accessibility errors that are not caught by a testing tool. Programmer misuse of technique. So if I go into a button and I put tab index equals -1, which is just a thing. If I was just to put that magic syntax on there, it now will not get focus. It also will not be caught as an error because I have done something to it as a developer. And so the tools will just ignore it, even though I have incorrectly coded it. And I just got through testing an e-learning application yesterday. They had taken the focus away from everything. And so literally you couldn't get to anything. But automated testing tools said, this is great, no problems. lack of industry standard accessibility treatment. So there's some things. So poor Joseph is trying to figure out how to make an accessible chart. If he runs an accessibility testing tool against his SVG graphic, as long as he's got some kind of alternate text on it, it's done. It's not accessible. It's not what he wants, but the tool will not get that because we just don't have the language yet to describe what the failure is. And then we've got gaps in accessibility testing tools. Testing tools, there's a million of them out there, and they're all programs, and they all have different engines. And so some do better in one thing, some things do better in another. I'm going to show you one called Wave. It's super simple, but it's not the deepest dive one. It does not catch any of the HTML5 errors. It catches fewer of the HTML5 errors. And I'll show you another one like a DQ or an accessible one from IBM, and it catches much more stuff, but much harder to use. Areas of disability outside the scope of the tool. Some of these tools, so the reason I wanted you to have the, if I can get to it, the reason I wanted you to have this, this chart is, the tools have scope. So if you're talking about a color contrast analyzing tool, it's only going to really do low vision. It's going to tell you about color contrast. It doesn't care about anything else on the screen, right? So these tools have scope. One tool doesn't do it all. You need a combination to kind of do that. Okay, any questions? You're like, come on, let's get this.
I grabbed a screenshot of that
Oh.
slide and put it in the notes in the Google Doc. But since it's a picture, I can't get the URL. And for some reason, in your slides that we posted that are PDF, the link that says, well, I guess it's a spreadsheet. But anyway, yeah, this one that you have that's it.
Oh, that one is the
posting.
it's also in the well, it's on the web page as well. So you can grab it. You can grab it out of there.
Okay, great.
That whole deep dive document. Okay. Everything I'm showing today is in here. It's this accessibility tools Excel right here.
Oh, super. Oh, okay, great.
Trying to give you what you need to get through this. So manual testing is really the way you catch all those things that the automated testing doesn't get. So that's the other 90%. Now there are tools that don't interpret. You click a button and it says, here's what I found. You tell me if it's accessible or you figure out it's accessible. And then I called out keyboard testing. The best way to keep your stuff accessible, use a keyboard, don't use a mouse. Now, does that mean you're going to be 100% accessible? No, but if you've got to come back and remediate something that is keyboard accessible, you can use it without a mouse. Adding the stuff for a screen reader is trivial. It's just adding a little bit of additional language. But if you come in and you can't use it from a keyboard, you got a now you've got a big development effort. So if you just do keyboard testing, you will be way ahead of the game. And then, so this is what we do. If you come to MicroAssist, the company I work for, and you say, we want you to do an audit of our software, we would come in and we would actually test with a screen reader or a screen magnifier, or depending how far you want to go down, using voice control like Dragon Naturally Speaking. We would actually test with the people with disabilities that use these on a daily basis. That's the way we get and I'll kind of draw that comparison again. There is compliance and there's usability. And compliance, the bar is a little bit lower. Can you get through it as painfully as possible? Yes or no? Versus usability, which is you want the best experience for your users regardless of ability. And now that's something we went over pretty extensively in the previous session. So usability and accessibility to me are the same thing. So let's take a look at so I'm going to go through and I'm going to do some testing, and we're going to see what we like and what we don't like. So for those of you that want to follow along, we can do this together. So I'm going to go into the example. I'm going to open two pages. I'm going to open the bad page and the good page. And let's start with the bad page. So automated testing is pretty easy. So I've installed the Wave toolbar. To find Wave, and if you'd like to work along with me, hopefully you have Google. Google is not Google, Chrome. Sorry. If
Everybody has Google.
everybody has Google. Chrome. If you Google Chrome extensions and go to the Chrome Web Store, you should be able to search for Wave. Hopefully, be able to install it. And then the Wave evaluation tool. And I can save you some time. You could have got this out. I like to show people how to find these things as opposed just to giving it to you, because it's that hopefully will stick. So I just sent it in a link in the chat just in case you can't find it. And if you'll install that, what it'll do is it's going to give you this little round W up here. Okay. And so I have this page and I'm going to click my round W and it goes, okay, I'm looking at your page. I'm doing an accessibility check. Let me tell you what I found. I found 3 errors. And it says, okay, you're missing alternative text. Okay. And I know this is a huge mucky mess over here. Whoops, I actually unchecked that. And sure enough, if I was to go in and look at the code for my graphic here, George Washington crosses the Delaware, there's no alternate text on that. So if I use my screen reader and I run into this, it's just going to say an image, and it's probably going to read the name of the file, which is something horrendous like George Washington.jpg or something like that. And then I have a missing label. Here we go. This is where automated testing excels, and this is also where lawsuits come out of. Your OCR, Office of Civil Rights complaint, is this guy right here. So we have a form field, and this label. I'm going to hit F5 just so I can clean it up so you can see it. This title should be associated to this field. So what I expect is if I was to go in and look at the code, I would have expected this to have a label and for it to say it is for this field. And I realize this isn't a programming class, but if I come down here and look at publish, you can see what one looks like. Where is it? Oh, body. I'm sorry, I clicked on something wrong. It's getting worse. The class is going downhill. Body. And here I have a label that is label for body is body. And if I come down here, I'll find the actual form field somewhere down in here, which is lost in the code. You'll see that there is an input of body. So that's all straightforward. So automated testing nailed it in one, right? Told me that it's not there. And then it's telling me I'm missing, there's no title on this page. So when I look at the bar up here, it doesn't give me this nice George Washington across the Delaware. It tells me just the name of the URL line. So that's all bad. Hey, but really, how many of us think that there are only 3 errors on this page? Wouldn't be using it if there were just 3. Okay, so let's go.
There's all those little icons, right? I mean,
so the other little icons, are interesting because they're telling you information like the greens are good. The yellows are things that are alerts. They're saying, you know what? I see that you're missing a field set around your thing. That's not necessarily an error, but you need to check it. This is what automated. This is what happens. Automated testing, you say, well, all these are rules. They should be able to be tested. Well, the problem is they're subjective or they have additional rules that make them complicated. See, it says you're missing the first heading level. So it's saying missing an H1. Not technically an error. You cannot have an H1. You're supposed to, but that's the reason it becomes in here as an alert. Redundant text and table layout. So there's a table in here. It's not good. So, but I mean, so it can only suggest that you look at these things. So what happens is people come in, they do the automated tests, they look at these, they never take time to go through the rest of the report. And a lot is still not caught. So, for example, I do not see anything in here about focus indication. So let's see if there are really more than 3 errors on this page. So if I have a mobility impairment, so let's say I have Parkinson's, I can't use a mouse. I don't have that fine of control. Or let's say that I'm a quadriplegic and I'm using a straw. This literally a guide that I can use with my mouth to guide through the screen. The way we test for that is we just simply tab. So I'm starting to tab through the page. Do you know where I am? Do you know where I am right now? No, I don't know where I am, so I don't know how you do. This is a huge error. And so I can do a little trick. I'm going to click the add focus button on the bottom side of the screen. And now you can see what it looks like when it comes back with focus indication. This is a huge issue that would not be caught by an automated testing tool. Likewise, if you notice, I'm tabbing through the document and all this is fine, and I got the title, I got the body, yes, no. What did I miss? The save button. I didn't get to the save button, you know? So this save button is not accessible. I can't get to it. So, you know, if I have a mobility impairment, it's not going to show up. And the save button, because the save button is strictly an image that I put JavaScript on, right? And so very, very common. So if I click it, it'll do something, but I can't get to it through the keyboard. So we always take these automated testing tools a little bit of a grain of salt. Now there are better testing tools, and they're in the Excel spreadsheet, and I'll show you them. So there's like ACTS is a great one, IBM Equal Access Accessibility Checker are good ones. So if I come in here now, with these you have to inspect elements. They're a lot more complicated, and you can look them up in if you want to load them, feel free to on the side. So they're more
Can I ask a question?
Sure,
Ryan?
absolutely, yeah, please.
If they're inspecting elements, does that mean that, for example, if you set up your CSS to be thoughtful about how these things are done, that it would literally cascade through the site to make certain things more effective?
So the error for this for this not having focus indication is a CSS error. Now here's the great thing about CSS. You have content and you have display, or you have, and so CSS broke the display from the content, which is great. We want that, right? So, we can change things independently. The problem is automated testing tools have a horrendous time looking into the CSS. Some of them do a better job than others, but very few of them will catch a focus indication issue. So you're doing everything that you think you're supposed to be doing. You're using your automated testing tools. It's coming back clean, and you get an OCR complaint. You're like, what? You're like, I literally have 0 errors in Wave, and then you find out Wave is not enough. So let's go in here, and I'm just going to show you another one, just because I want to show off. So this is the let me just do Axe. Okay. So this is a free I'm not sure everything I show you is free. I understand that we're all on budgets, right? So this is a free tool, and that run by DQ. And so when you come in here, you can select. It ran a report, and it says, hey, your title element's missing. And we caught that in Wave too, right? So it came in here and said, here it is. Here's your problem. Here's how you fix it. You don't have alternate text. Here it is. That's the one that doesn't have alternate text, and then it has information on how to fix it. Labels, so we found the one thing that doesn't have a label, and then it went into the other thing. So landmarks are something that we covered in the last session a little bit. There are ways of giving contextual information on here. I'll come back to that. Must contain a heading level 1. It must be consistent. So this is one of the top tools out there, and it can't find something as simple as a focus indication issue. It did not find that the save button can't be acted on, which I'm really kind of surprised on that one, but it doesn't do it. So those are 2 of the automated testing tools. So my recommendation so far to you, we're kind of building it slowly, is 1, you do your automated testing, because that catches 30 to 40% of the errors. Get them out of the way. Then 2, come in and do your keyboard testing. Simply use your keyboard and use the application. That is going to catch a tremendous number of things, and the ones that are actually going to get you in trouble. For example, I was gonna. Do I have one here to show you? Really don't have one to show you. Okay, but there are other errors on this page. Like, these are links that are are not detectable. They don't have an underline. First thing people do when they create a website is they kill the underline for links. I have no idea why. I guess they like the way it looks. And so that is an issue. That is a WCAG failure. And I can give you instances where this causes severe problems. In Texas, I went to the University of Texas, and what is their color? Burnt orange, right? And back in my day, it was an orange that was right in the middle of the lumosity scale, right? So it did not pass if it was on top of something. You could put orange on black, it doesn't work. You can put orange on white, and it doesn't work. And they had a student who failed one of their tests miserably, and he got with his friends and he said, what was that test all about? It made no sense. And like, what are you talking about? You read the question, you click the link, it opened the graph, and you answered the question. He goes, what link? Well, all of their links were an orange color. So what happens is people that are colorblind or have color deficiency, there's actually several levels of color deficiency. Now, this is not a testing tool I'm getting ready to show you. This is what I call an empathy tool. So it's one that when you need to go back and you need to talk to your people and you want to show them, well, what does it mean to have a disability? And color blindness is a good one to do. You can use no coffee or this high contrast. So as we go through here, we can change and we can kind of see what it looks like. Let me find the bad example. Where's my other bad example? Oh, I lost my other bad example. So, but we can go through here and we can kind of see how different color deficiencies change this. So if we're on, there's things like we need to test color contrast, right? In order to do this, the other reason we need to test color contrast, not everybody keeps their screens like this. People with low vision need to put things in a high contrast mode. So this is one called it's a high contrast simulator. So a lot of people this is the colors of their computer. Everything is like this. The desktop, Word, everything is in this high contrast mode. So when we do things like, let me turn that back off. So when we want to test things like, well, does this have sufficient foreground, background color contrast that a person can change it? We need to have something to test that. And so that is where we get into manual testing tools. And so manual testing tools, there's some good ones on here like the color contrast analyzer. Now this is an application that is run. And so if I can find it, I'll run it. And so as a manual testing tool, it's not going to automatically do anything. You're going to have to go in here and you're going to have to say what you're looking at. So I'd come in here and say, okay, is this color sufficient to pass for accessibility? And it always blows up in the background. I have no idea why, but it works. Is this color on that background sufficient that if a person is using an alternate set of colors or they have a color deficiency, that they will be able to see it and detect it's there. Now, the nice thing is this manual testing tool gives you kind of a yes, no answer. It says this passes for large text and this passes for normal text. So this is an example of a manual testing tool that allows you to very easily come in here and do checks so you can handle people that have a different kind of vision other than just blindness. Now for Joseph, he's got a very complex thing. So he's given us one of our samples here. Let me find it. Now there it is. So Joseph wants to know, what would a screen reader read if it could get to this object? Now his task is far more difficult than what I would normally demo, but let's play with it. So we're going to solve some issues here. So this is called the A viewer, and I believe it's for the Mac and for Windows. And it is also in the spreadsheet. It is right accessibility viewer right there by the Paciello group. So what this allows me to do is I'm able to come in here and I can actually kind of find out what a screen reader is going to read by accessing it through the accessibility API. So if I click this little arrow and I come over here and I hover, it's going to come back and it's going to say, okay, for this point, I do not have a name. So this is what Joseph was complaining about, was if you get a screen reader and you get to this, when it comes in here and it looks at that, it's not going to be able to see it. But to show you a success, I'll come over here and Joseph right now is going, I should not have sent him that page.
Well, I can tell you in advance, I've never tested this, but it's going to fail. It's categorically, because this stuff is a decade old, right? It's written before half of this stuff even existed.
The nice thing is, though, if it's HTML4, it's actually not too far off. So HTML4 was rudimentary. The dynamic stuff is a nightmare, but the core stuff, so like your usage, if I hover above it, it actually has the accessibility name as usage. Perfect. It's a little text. It's linked. So this is so I bring this one up specifically for you, Joseph, because eventually you're going to start trying to come up with something that is better than this, and it gives you a good way to come in here and actually kind of find out what's being read. But just to do a little experiment here, let's see what Wave thinks of your site. Okay, 13 errors, and I kind of expected that, but like the majority of these are easy cleanup. So you're missing a label here. You go to start, you make your label, you associate it to your farm field. So I mean, that's pretty easy. You're missing your language. So in the page, what we expect to see is you actually say this is an English page. Not the end of the world, but just an academic failure. Empty buttons. Now those get to be, I don't know exactly what that is. Let me see if I can find out what that button was. Empty buttons are difficult because they don't have a that means they don't have a name. So if I was to come in here and test it, it'd probably say I can't tell you what these are. This is really a cool application. So just for grins, I'm gonna run your A viewer here. Find out what those are. Twink. Oh yeah, job size. So, and now the ultimate way to test something is to actually, where am I on my thing? I want to be sure I don't leave anything out. So the ultimate way to test something, especially as complicated as this, is you want to get a screen reader, and then you want to use the screen reader and you want to actually try the application. So I tell you what I'll do. I'll first do the just so I don't believe either one of you came to the planarium, so I'll just do a quick screen reader test on this and kind of show you.
NV cop. Okay. Oh, George Washington.
Can everybody hear that? That speaking in the background? Excellent. Okay. So when I look at this page, I, as a sighted user, I see that there is a banner at the top. I see there's this main section. I see there's this navigational area. I see there's a footer. If you follow the HTML5 and ARIA rules, you will create what's called landmarks around it. And so what happens when you make those landmarks, you actually are giving an equivalent experience to somebody that uses assistive technology. So not just a screen reader user, but people that anybody that uses assistive technology to access this will be able to get that same contextual information. So while this is very graphic, I have now given a person who is using a screen reader equivalent information. And then we say things like
close George
and I'm sorry, I can't prevent it from talking. So when we come in here, we well, let's see.
George.
Let's just do this. So sorry.
Elements.
So when we say we want you to write links that don't say click here, I'm sure you've heard that. Don't use the click here for the links. That's because I, as a screen reader user, can pull things out of context. As a visual user, I can very quickly look at this screen and I can say, oh, there are these content breakouts. There's George Washington crosses Delaware. There's dates. There's resources. Those must be important. George Washington must be the most important thing on the page. Look how big it is. And dates must be a subset of that, right? So those are headings.
Grouping.
If you take the time and you use appropriate tagging and you make a heading level 1 a heading level 1, and the 2's a 2, and the 3 a 3, I, as a screen reader user, can come in here and get the exact same experience. So now, just as a sighted user can come in and go, oh, I want to move to dates. A screen reader user can come in here and do the exact same thing.
Tree view, level 1 dates,
and I move to
1 of
dates,
2.
and I'll move to
Main
it.
landmark dates, heading level 2.
And now I've moved my focus right there, just as a sighted user would start reading from there. Then as I move down the page,
list with 3 items, bullet December 25th, 1776 prepares troops.
Excellent. So I, as a sighted user, recognize that that's a set of bulleted lists. So because we took the time to code it properly, then it retains its semantics, right?
Oil
so it's going to be the same experience for assistive technology person as it is for somebody that is visual. So I want to just get through 2 more pages, and then we'll do whatever you like. So I've showed you a few of the tools, and so now you get to an interesting conversation, which is there's kind of 2 groups that are actually using your gateway, or using using your gateway. Let's just stick with that, right? There's the software designers, and so the software designers, they're the ones that are creating the infrastructure around the outside. Doesn't matter whether it's a WordPress site, a Drupal site, a gateway site, they're the people that are doing the outside, right? And so they have to have a very good understanding of the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, HTML5, and ARIA. So ARIA is remember, that's the peanut butter for HTML5. It's filling in those accessibility gaps. And they're going to have a good understanding of manual and automated testing techniques. So do you have to test with a screen reader? Joseph, yes. you're in the tough zone. So I mean, when it comes to testing those graphs, you're going to have to do some screen reader testing. Now the gate, but that leaves the whole authoring practice, right? So authors are just people who don't create the gateway. They take their content, they're scientists, you're putting it in, the students, they're putting it in there. Really, for accessibility, we have progressed quite a long ways. If you just use the native tools, so in other words, use the bulleted list that is in, whoops, that's PowerPoint. Use the bulleted list feature, it will create the materials for you. When it comes time to highlight something, don't just color it and make it bigger and paint it red and make it a slightly bigger size. Look for those headings. Now, the same thing applies to Word as it does inside of your gateway. Somewhere in there are your headings, and so you use those. Why do I do that? So when somebody that's using assistive technology comes in, they will get the exact same experience. And the last thing is you look for the accessibility features. And now this is an easy one. So an image has alternate text on it. We kind of saw that. You write, literally what the image is in some manner, right? So they didn't say put alternate text on the graphic. They said describe the image for someone who cannot see it, which actually is probably a better description than put alternate text. And so you put in that's what appears. But there's a tricky one down here. Description not necessary. So if you click that, what it'll do is it'll put alt equals and it'll put open and close quotes. And now as you're telling the screen reader, I acknowledge this image is there. It is not for you. It is eye candy. It has no value. You can ignore it, right? So there's kind of 2 things going on there. And so that brings us back to this, this sheet that I gave you. I wanted to give you a push, and because the real checklist is huge. I have one that's massive, and I would be happy to come do it sometime, but it's an 8-hour class. But I wanted to push you in the right direction, right? So here are content checks. So here is that whole non-text content with the graphics. And I've linked on an article that tells you more about it, what you should write. But I also said you can use the Wave tool, and you said, well, Hiram, yeah, you said Wave can catch images that are not accessible. But how else could I use, well, I'll tell you what, let me skip that back. So Wave, we saw it. Wave, you click it and it'll tell you whether image isn't accessible. And so when you have a bulleted list that doesn't have bullets, so the term that actually fails it is information and relationships. It's literally what it says. If you're going to put something around it for a visual user, that semantics need to be available to everybody else, right? And so that's the reason we use the native things. And so we saw a little bit about the contrast. So here's the, these all kind of line back up with Paul's articles. If you go back in here, here are the categories he has. Here are the principles that I wanted to tell you that he was talking about in his usability study. And then here is the check, and then here's something to kind of help you along the way. The headings and labels are interesting because when for a user or for a person that's just putting content into the system, they're doing this part, right? They are well, I need some more windows open. That's what I need. So they're doing this part. They're writing content in here, but headings can be used to denote areas. So you can use it to navigate around the screen. I personally like landmarks, but you can do that. So what happens is you're going to find out that that this lands in two areas. So it lands in this content checks that your people who are putting information into your gateway would follow, and then it also there's a series of application development checks. So for the people that are creating gateways, the people that are actually doing the coding, there is heading shows up again, and the reason is people actually will use these as ways to navigate around the screen, not just navigate around the content. And I've got a whole tutorial on there for that. But to jump down to the application development checks, there's things like meaningful sequence and bypass blocks. And so the nice thing, one of the interesting things about the wave tool, one of the things that it'll do for you, and there's other things that'll do this, is if you're not sure what order all this stuff is going to come out in, you can always run the wave tool, and I'm watching my time, and you can turn it off and it'll turn off the style sheets and it'll kind of give you a stripped down version of it. Extremely handy because sometimes there are errors that you can't see. They're off the screen because of some reason, just the way the site is coded. So, and there are other tools like this is a tool that basically it's really for developers, but you can come in here and you can disable all styles and you can kind of do it. You can do it that way. So, I mean, there's some wonderful tools that help you there. Now, unfortunately, I've been talking at you now for way too long. And the last thing that I want to tell you, because I don't want to leave without something that you can go to know I've seen a pattern that works, right? So I've told you everything that's wrong. Let me tell you something that is that's right. And if I can bring this back out on the screen. And I really suggest you bookmark this page. There's this patterns, the way ARIA authoring practices. I can't tell you how many people go, a modal dialog box. When I click a button, it opens a box and I need to fill it out. I need to do something. I need to save it. I need to click OK. I need to do something. How do I make that accessible? So there is a wonderful modal dialog pattern, right? So, and it goes into gory details. And what I like about this site is not only does it tell you how to do it, it tells you how to test it. This is what the keyboard support. This is what you need to send to your QA staff. This is what you need to send to your developers. This is the way the industry is expecting this object to work. So just kind of showing you from the keyboard, no mouse. It's like a magic trick, right? I hit enter. It opens the modal dialog box. I try to escape it. I tried to fall in the background. It won't let me fall in the background. How many times? See, you probably never tried this, but in a modal dialog box, what happens is you fall in the background. So, so I'm not going to, so, and there's a particular way this is coded, and boy, I would love to sit there and take that one apart with y'all. But I can see that it's 3:57, and I think I really ran to the edge of my time. But I got to the last thing. I've given you a pattern that you can go pick the good stuff out.